All right, friends, so we ended with our staircase. We are now going to draw an additional rectangle here on the bottom corner of where our Great Wall picture ends. So let's draw that rectangular figure and then use kind of like a square cutout that I was telling you guys before, like we used for the top of the watchtower. Now you can see right here that my square cutout is kind of too big. So I'm going to erase that. I'm going to replace it closer towards um, the middle of the staircase here to kind of give myself some room to have my cutout end near the edge of my walkway here. See what I'm saying? That way I have an equal distribution between both squares. So bear with me here. And kind of like we did on the top of the watchtower where we put some sort of kind of horizontal line from one end to the other just underneath our cutouts, we're going to do the same thing here. This, I believe, is another watchtower, and it is placed partially away or away from our original watchtower that we drew in class. So let's kind of establish that border there so that way we know where our stairs are going to generally start for our watchtower number 2. Now, give me a second here as I kind of fine tune my work here and shade in my cutout so that way my cutout pops forward and closer to the viewer. Next, we're going to add the tiny details inside that little border piece underneath the cutouts that we have put inside the top of our watchtower. There's a little kind of lip there that kind of has a series of dots or tiny little squares in it. Let's establish that first before moving forward. Next, we'll add a very thin layer of shadow on the left-hand side of where your stairwell will begin. This will help make it look like it's protruding out towards the viewer. Now we need to cut off this area because you're going to have that opening where the stairwell begins while people walk up to this platform. So let's kind of add a border to cut off that area to kind of establish that there's going to be a space here. And then we're going to start working on the platform part after we're establishing our stairs. Now keep in mind I'm eyeballing this, so I might need to extend the length of my stairs, but the stairs are going to be a series of gradually increasing horizontal lines with right angles on the ends of them to kind of outline the edge of the staircase. Don't forget to feather in your texture for the top of your watchtower number 2 by feathering in those soft rectangular squares. Make sure they vary in the size and length to kind of stress more of a realistic texture instead of making everything perfectly the same size. Just like we did with that one edge, we're also going to do with this edge. Let's shade the left-hand side of our watchtower's cutout, the one that's closest to the stairs. Because you have a casting shadow, the sun is on the opposite side. Now the block that's closest to you, the viewer, is the one on the most left-hand side. We're not going to add any shadow to that because we're seeing that block head on from a symmetrical head-on perspective. So no shadow will be needed for that area. We need to create kind of a platform here, and we're going to do that by adding 2 parallel lines. Your top parallel line is going to be a little bit shorter than your bottom parallel line, and you're going to connect those 2 edges on the right hand side using a diagonal slant. This is the platform where whomever is guarding the watchtower, this is where they're going to stand. Remember how you kind of create the shape when drawing a three-dimensional cube? Well, we're only going to draw the bottom part of a three-dimensional cube to kind of establish a platform kind of structure for whoever is in charge of this area. Now those two corners that you have established by adding that diagonal slant, well, you're going to do two vertical lines. This is going to be the wall of the platform or the fence-in area to protect the watcher from falling over to the other over the wall. So make sure that you add these to kind of create that three-dimensional structure for your person to stand upon. Okay, so to make this look a little bit more three-dimensional, let's clean up our line and then let's add our shadow. Try to add your shadow by mimicking that diagonal slant. You're going to add your shadow using a diagonal sideward slant. And for your back panel here, or the really back far end of your platform wall, you're going to use a horizontal stroke. You're mimicking the way the panels are placed to create a three-dimensional illusion. Then we're going to add the other side of our watchtower by extending out that kind of decorative lip that we have on just underneath our cutout. We're going to extend that out. We're going to add our bricks, and then we're going to also establish the cutout portion on your right hand side. So bear with me here as we go through this process. All right, so let's add the other side of the wall and extend our way out. Don't forget your texture, and it looks like here I'm going to have to extend my stairway up to the edge of where the front of my column on my right hand side. You know how you do the side diagonal hat shading, and then there's a rectangular column that's facing the viewer. I'm gonna have to extend my stairs out to that area, and then gradually move my stairwell larger and larger and larger as it goes down the page. Remember, I mentioned I was eyeing it and that I might have to do that. Don't forget to extend your stairway so it matches up to the other half of your watchtowers cut out. So here I am extending my stairway. Now it's time for me to just extend my horizontal lines out to my new end of my stairway, and we'll switch back to the left hand side and start working on the wall that's kind of going back and away from the viewer. We're going to do a little bit of a diagonal slant here, probably maybe a 45-degree slant, and kind of create a cutout. Now the cutout is going to be a lot skinnier and smaller than the cutouts facing the viewer because this cutout is being looked at from its side, and it's also being faced away or moving away from the viewer. So it's going to get smaller. There's that foreshortening trick that I talked about in the past. Let's mimic the lines that we've created by creating a shade in the exact same pattern, moving all the way from the top of this wall piece down towards that lip, and then skip over the lip and continue the shading all the way down to the bottom of your paper. Remember, we're imitating this shading direction to create a three-dimensional illusion using directional line in order to trick your eye to make it look like it's moving away from the viewer. Let's do 2, if not 3 layers of shade on this side to make it look darker because it's furthest away from your sunlight source. And then we'll bebop back to the right hand side and continue adding our textured squares and brick to watchtower number 2. Now it's time to add those windows. Feel free to shade them at a decently dark rate to kind of help them pop so you can see it better from the background. Let's kind of imitate our brick-like pattern that we did with Watchtower number one. Let's do it to, Watchtower number two, actually. Let's do it to Watchtower number one, but Watchtower number one is further back. So your shading should be a lot lighter, but you are going to mimic uh, the shade. You're going to want to make sure that the direction of your shading mimics the direction of the line on the panels of which you are drawing. So that side piece there, that's facing away from the viewer, we're going to shade that at a slightly diagonal slant to kind of emphasize that it's moving away from the viewer. And then the face of the watchtower that's facing you front on is just going to get a regular horizontal kind of, shading style. This is going to help separate your panels and create a three-dimensional effect. Last but not least, don't forget to add the contour lines inside your hills. These are your shadow groupings or your shadow shapes. Feel free to use a smudging technique or maybe even use like a scribbling shading technique to emphasize the structure of the bushiness of your trees if you choose to do so. You can soften up those lines by taking a paper towel or a tissue and kind of rubbing it over your pencil lines, and those pencil lines will start to soften. I would do at least one layer of shade for your light green, two layers for your medium green, and three layers for your dark green.